here's this.
Well, hey guys, thank you for being here.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, this is absolutely Tim's pleasure.
We do really appreciate I mean, I know that you don't do this much, Tim, especially, so doing it for us, it makes us feel all warm and fuzzy inside, so thank you.
I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely. And welcome back, Scott. It's good to see your face this time around.
Yeah.
We just had you on the phone last
thank
time.
you. That is not something people normally say to me. So
I don't even think I was around the last time.
You weren't born yet.
You talked.
It was a long
that,
time ago.
That interview wasn't that long ago. I'm at least 3 years old.
Welcome, Watchtower Database, everybody watching to the very first panel of our 24-hour live stream. No pressure, Scott and Tim, for being the first on. You have to be extremely entertaining right from the get-go, or else the whole thing is just ruined. But so, real quick, before I introduce these guys, you probably know at least one of them by face and one of them by cartoon face via his Instagram. But we've got a ton of giveaways going on throughout this 24 hours. We will be announcing the giveaways on the stream in between panels, and that's all I have to say about that, because you probably already heard a little intro about that before we even started. We're here with Tim Levins. He is the artist for Gotham Adventures, specifically for this panel, but he's also on Justice League Adventures, a billion other things, a lot of the Capstone books. I'm going to go off of my mental list here, but I know that you could probably tell us a dozen. The NASCAR comics, the Justice League NASCAR comics.
Yes.
That was an obscure one, yeah.
Yeah, which we're now the proud recipients of, so thank you for those. Those will be a great addition to the website that we're indefinitely working on. And we're here with Scott Peterson, writer for Gotham Adventures and editor on Batman Adventures: The Lost Years, and also a billion other things that I have no time to list. So welcome, Tim and Scott, to panel one, and we appreciate you beyond words.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
And so, Tim, we wanted to start off talking to you, and sorry. I know that I should mention Tim Levins is making a very rare public appearance just for us, so we really appreciate it, man.
Public from the comfort of his home.
Yes.
I guess if it has to be, this is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah.
That's how badly the quarantine is getting to everyone. Even Tim agreed to a virtual.
That's right, a virtual public appearance.
We are truly in the near apocalypse if he's doing it.
It's just about a decade late.
I'm going to stop ragging on you, Tim. I just want to hear about you're working on the recent Capstone kids books that are in the DCAU style. What is the process for you on picking and choosing character designs for that? Because we've talked a little bit about this in like private messages and stuff, but what brings you back to this DCAU style? Is it mandated by the company, or do you get to have any say in I want Hal Jordan to look like this, I want the Flash to be Barry Allen, all that kind of stuff?
Fortunately, no, I don't get to say a lot. They pretty much tell me what I have to draw. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Bruce Timm designs anyway, so it's not as if I, would want to change anything. But no, it's all pretty much mandated by Capstone. Like even strange things. Like I know you and I have talked about the design of the Flash and how they wanted him to be Barry Allen, so that I altered his costume, but I kind of kept the same head of Wally West, and so it was kind of this weird. But nobody really called me out on it, so I just kind of I just did my thing, and then later had you point out that it was a mixed up design.
Well, pointing out costume weirdness is my specialty, I think. So
I also imagine that those books are probably for a younger audience, like my contemporaries, the other 3-year-olds. So it makes sense that they wouldn't catch the things that James is catching.
The discussion of Maddie being 3 years old happened before the official recording of this, so no one knows what you're talking about. But if Maddie is canonically 3 years old, and it's part of the Watchtower Database lore now, so.
As far as Capstone goes, I've always just thought it was cool to see characters like Firestorm and Blue Beetle pop up who weren't actually in the JLEU cartoons, just to see them in that style that you draw. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really liked when I had a chance to draw a character that was that hadn't existed previously, like in the TV series or whatever. It was fun to try to take the the established look of the characters in the comic books and then transfer it into a Bruce Timm type style.
Yeah. And Scott, when you work with Tim on Gotham Adventures, or well, worked past tense, it was a couple years ago that you guys made that comic.
It was before my time.
Yeah.
Gotham Adventures was actually the first comic I ever bought in a store. I don't know if I've shared that before. It was issue number 5. There was a Ty Templeton issue. It was Mr. Freeze on the cover. That was the first comic book I ever purchased. Yeah, fun fact.
Cool.
Yeah, I was
Go
gonna.
ahead,
I was gonna. Thank you, Ted. No. I was just gonna ask. Actually, taking over from Ty Templeton and company on the run. I think you guys started around issue number 15, if I'm right.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. And then, you got it right there.
is.
And then I'm pretty sure you guys continued until the series was over. So, what taking over from Ty and those guys? Was it? Did they share like story elements with you guys, or was it just completely, clean slate, do whatever you want at that point?
Do you want me to take this, Tim, or do you want it?
Yeah, no, go for it. I mean, you're the one. The stories start with you. So,
So I had worked with Ty Templeton and Rick Burchett when I was on staff. They had worked on the first 3 issues of the Batman Adventures, the first animated book, the first Adventures book in comic book history.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to go a very long way to find a bigger fan of either of those guys than me. I think Ty Templeton is on the short list of most talented creators to ever work in the medium. He's
Absolutely.
a great writer. He's a great penciler. He's a great inker. He's a great colorist, a letterer. I think he paints. I don't know that for sure.
He
but
does watercolors,
yeah, he can, in addition to that, he is a killer musician, and he had a really nice and he had a nice acting career. Like, this freaking guy, he is the it's crazy how talented he is, and he's a great guy. And
I didn't know all that stuff following in his footsteps.
Yeah, well, and good thing, right?
Well, we were trying to get Ty on for one of these panels, so even though we didn't, I'm glad that you're basically vouching for him, and we get to hear all about his life story.
He's so good, crazy good. His wife is amazing. He's been a great father. Like, this guy, seriously, he does everything. He was in Sea of Love with Al Pacino and John Goodman and Ellen Barkin. How cool is that?
Really?
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember,
How
but
did we not know this?
I'm writing it down to watch it
We're gonna have
later.
to go watch it. Yeah.
okay, so my understanding is that he plays John Goodman's soon-to-be son-in-law. Like, at one point, he invites Al Pacino, hey, listen, my daughter's getting married this weekend. Come to the wedding. And that's when Al Pacino, like, puts 2 and 2 together and thinks, I know how we can catch Ellen Barkin, something like that. Spoilers. Ty plays the son-in-law, which I believe the part in the editing room got shrunk down, so you see him dancing at one point. Like, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
He had a bigger role, but he was on a sitcom in Canada in the 80s, I think. I think it was some sort of some kind of cop sitcom.
Is it? I've got his IMDb pulled up. Is it the Ren 1010 K9 Cop?
That sounds like it.
His most famous
Great title
in history. Yeah.
And again, he is an absolutely killer musician. The dude can do anything. He's amazing.
So you guys also worked on Gotham Adventures.
Yeah. So here's my point to all that, is that one of the things about the Adventures books is that, with very few exception, there's not a ton of continuity, right? Most of the issues are one and done. Mm-hmm. So it's not like we were taking over in the middle of this, gigantic 3-year-long storyline or something like that. So,
it's no Batman Adventures Volume 2. It's
that's it. So basically, when Darren Vincenzo, the editor, called me and said there'd been a scheduling snafu and you needed a script in like 3 days, and was I interested in the job? I was like, yeah, sure. And I don't remember if I asked him the villain or if I said, how about Bane? But Bane, I think, hadn't been used in the previous 14 issues. And so I I sent him a
And
story.
he was the star of the George Clooney Batman movie, so I'm sure that sold like hotcakes immediately.
Yeah, that would explain it. Yeah, so anyhow, I sent him a story idea, Darren. In a couple hours, he said yes. I wrote it in like 3 days, and that was about that. And I have to admit, I was disappointed when I found out that this new kid was going to be drawing it. And then Darren sent me the pages, and I was like, "Hey, is this guy married? Because I want to marry him."
I think we all do, Tim. Welcome to the. This is actually a wedding ceremony live stream.
Actually, it's The Bachelor. You have to choose.
Yeah.
I'm only 3 years old, so I'm off limits.
Tim, is that your first professional work for DC?
It was, actually. I had been sending them samples of my work for a few years. I had an image black and white series that I did, and I was sending copies of that to DC, and I got lots of rejection letters, including actually one that I have here that Scott himself, I don't know if anybody can see that, but Scott's name is there. Package. So it just goes to show you that you can get off to a rocky start with somebody, but then it builds.
So this is also Survivor, and we're voting Scott off the island.
Yeah, I concur. Have we ever talked about that?
Apparently not, because I had no idea.
You called me a liar. You said that you didn't think that I was telling the truth, so
you had to prove it.
Yeah.
This is why Tim is really on the webcam, is to show the proof.
Yeah.
It was a setup all along. We've ambushed you. Tim told us that he was gonna do this to you.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I kept getting rejection letters, as many people trying to break into the business do, and I guess I just assumed that, I wasn't on any list or anything. And then out of the blue, I got a call from Darren just before Christmas, 1998. And he asked me, he left a message. I was actually not home, of all things. I was dog sitting for somebody and staying at their house. And he left a message saying that he was from DC Comics and he wanted to know if I wanted to draw a fill-in issue. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had kind of written them off. I assumed that there was no way because as I said, I got lots of rejection letters. So anyway, and then I called him back, and then he was out of the office because it was Christmas, and so I was sort of nervously waiting for him to get back to me, and then he finally did, and I did my first issue. I actually have some samples of artwork that I gave him, not the samples that I mailed and that he rejected, but once he called me, he said, "Would you mind doing some sketches?" I don't know if I can share that with you guys now on the screen, or if there's a way to do that, or
if you hold it close enough, we'll probably be able to see.
No, I mean it's on the screen. That's fine. They're not even very
okay, gotcha.
So if it's there is a screen share option, but I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, no, that's all right. That's okay. But anyway,
feel free to share something with me later if you want, and I can plug it in during the video. But either way, whatever's good.
Anyway, I mean, they're pretty rough looking, but anyway, he thought they were good enough, anyway, so he gave me the job, and then that one issue kind of turned into a few more, and then eventually.
How long was the run overall? It did at number 60 something.
It went to 60, yeah.
60,
yeah, you guys had quite the run. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably the longest consecutive, same team DCAU tie-ins run, I would think, because all the other ones went all over the place, and now it'll be this person writing and this person drawing and all that stuff. But Gotham Adventures was, at a certain point, it's just you guys for years. So.
Yeah, well, it was great. It was a lot of fun.
And Scott, Lost Years was before Gotham Adventures, correct? Or did it kind of come out consecutive or at the same time?
Concurrent.
There you go. Thank you, Tim.
So I believe it went the Batman Adventures, the Batman and Robin Adventures, the Lost Years, Gotham Adventures, and then the Batman Adventures again. I think that's how it goes. So yes, so Lost Years was between Batman and Robin Adventures and Gotham Adventures.
Yeah, so working on Lost Years. Lost Years has come up a lot during I don't know if you've been reading the new Batman Adventures Continue comic that Ty's working on, but there's a lot of instances of like, now the Lost Years is probably 3 years. Now it's maybe 4 years, all this like extension of it. So we're constantly like struggling with, oh my gosh, is Lost Years canon? Is this new comic canon? What's going on? So I have no idea if when you worked on Lost Years, was there any, I've asked you this on Facebook 1,000 times and the answer is basically no, but I just wanted to get proof here on film that there wasn't any sort of like internal, timeline of events of sorts, because you're editing that constantly. I'm sure that you're picking apart all the little, it's 800 and whatever days later of, all that kind of stuff.
Well, one of the things that was unique about the Lost Years was that Hilary J. Bader was the writer, was pretty much by that point the main writer or one of the main writers on the animated show.
Right.
And obviously there was this gap in continuity on the animated show when, after Dick Grayson quit being Robin and before he showed up as Nightwing. And because she was one of the main writers, that book was closer to being canon with the animated continuity than pretty much, I think, any other animated book. So
that's probably similar to the new series because it's being written by.
You would think so.
Writers from the show.
Right. So, I don't remember whether we had a timeline. My recollection is that this is stuff that Hillary and Bruce and Paul had all talked about extensively before she started writing The Lost Years. We might have had an official timeline or outline. I don't know. Right. I had a newborn at the time. I probably was operating on 3 hours of sleep.
I read in one of the letter pages recently from I think Batman and Robin Adventures where you were saying that you had been working with Paul Dini on a timeline.
Gotcha.
So I think there was something that existed.
Right.
We're saying you're lying, and we need you to stop.
I probably am. I have been sworn to secrecy, so I'm trying not to.
You'd have to kill us if you told. I understand.
It's the whole confidentiality agreement.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I've moved literally 7 times since then. DC has moved offices, obviously, from one side of the country to the other.
Yeah. That's the problem with us being a YouTube channel about 20, 30-year-old cartoons is we chose an era that is near and dear to so many people, and yet most stuff about it is on paper in someone's closet, and there's no way to track it down. So
we're lucky to have found the amount of things that we have found.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing in that sense, though. It's like it came out right before the huge boom in technology for animation stuff, and kind of a perfect time for nostalgia.
Right.
I don't know.
And Tim, you're doing the Capstone books and a handful of other you're doing a lot of commissions lately, and your merchandise and that kind of stuff, where you're basically creating brand new DCAU style artwork. You got all your Superman and Batman character banners and stuff that you're doing, which we've all been really enjoying. Except
it's been fun.
Well, I shouldn't say except, but Maddie was a little bit peeved that you didn't use his Superman character suggestions. But
yeah, that's true. I forgot about that email.
What was it again? It was Superman, Supergirl, Bizarro, Doomsday, and Galatea.
Oh yeah, all the siblings. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was actually that's a good idea. But the thing is, Doomsday wasn't in Superman the animated series.
Yeah, no, he didn't show up until Justice League Unlimited, but he's a clone.
Well, just make sure you mix and match character designs from all the different shows so that it bugs us for the rest of the time. But what I was gonna is what brings you back to doing that stuff so often? Do you feel like it's what you're known for? Because you're constantly doing other projects. You're working on the All Luck comics with oh my gosh.
It's Dan Davis.
Yeah, Dan Davis. Yeah. Stuff like that. You're not just the Batman guy, but I think that's obviously what we think of you as.
I have a lot of the work that I've done since Gotham Adventures ended. probably was still in that DCAU style, like the Capstone books and various comics after that. But yeah, I have done other things. I have a graphic novel coming out next month, Scholastic Canada. It's called Planet Hockey. Nothing to do with superheroes at all. It's like my own style, but I don't know. I guess I just have a fondness for that DC animated style, and
yeah, I mean, you're sitting in front of a whole room full of it.
Yeah, exactly. So you guys get it, obviously.
Later on in the live stream, we're going to be chatting with Matt Manning, who wrote the Justice League Adventures number 33 that you drew with Tim Drake Robin. Yeah, is there anything you want to pass along to him that we can share when we talk with him later? About that issue?
I enjoyed the issue.
You suck, Matthew Manning.
That's mean.
You'll never be as good as Scott Peterson. That's what you have to say.
Oh, I'm kidding. Nobody's ever as good as Scott to me. Although Matthew is great.
I'll say Matthew probably hasn't ever sent you a rejection letter.
That's right. Hey.
So you got to rank them.
Okay, yeah. Let me rethink this.
You can never trust a 3-year-old.
I'm about to go stick my fingers in the socket.
To go back, so you come from animation originally, so your style is already just naturally kind of on the clean side, wouldn't you say?
Well, thank you, Todd. I appreciate that, but we're here to talk about Gotham Adventures. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's part of the reason why. I really liked the Batman animated TV shows. Part of the reason why I contacted you guys in the first place at DC was because my natural style, like that image series that I was talking about, it was drawn in a cartoony type style. So I kind of thought it was a good fit for me. And a lot of the drawings that I'm doing now, like the ones that James was just referencing, I feel like I'm one of these artists. I feel like there are artists who either think the world of themselves or who are very hard on themselves. And I find whenever I look back at my old stuff, I generally don't like it. So I always feel like I bet I could do these drawings better now if I tried, and so that's part of the reason why I also can't seem to let go of the DC animated stuff. But
so it's kind of a Han shot first, re-editing kind of.
Gotham Adventures remastered.
Yeah, can we get
you're the George Lucas of comics.
Yeah.
When are we getting
all of these things?
When are we getting Gotham Adventures 2.0 with all the new drawings?
Yeah, a bunch of CGI aliens in the background.
Right.
They're having such a hard time already trying to talk DC into releasing Gotham Adventures and trade collections. Yeah. So I mean that might take a while.
It's crazy. I don't know why. It's like the one animated series that I can think of that hasn't been collected.
They had announced a volume 1, and then they had canceled it, and now they've been announcing collections where it's just like character focused ones. So it's just like, here's this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue, and also a Justice League Adventures issue.
Yeah.
And I wish they would just give me the full thing.
I'd love to get the full run. Yeah. I think Gotham Adventures is the one I did collect, and I've got every issue somewhere in a box somewhere. So that's good for me, but I want the rest of the world to be able to read it.
The three of us were right in the right age range for those at the time where, we
there's a guy.
Oh no, Tim froze again. There's a guy. Tell us what kind of guy.
Oh no.
Oh, you're back.
You're back.
Am I still frozen?
No, you're good. Okay. You're good. You were saying that there's a guy.
Yeah, you guys are back.
Although we may be a little delayed now.
So there's the guy.
Maybe Scott can talk for a second.
Well, I can actually tell you what he's about to tell you, but instead, I will, while we're waiting for Tim to come back, I will, a Gotham Adventure bit of trivia that you guys probably know, but most people don't, is that Tim co-wrote issue 50, but isn't credited as the co-writer.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
And I actually have some extra trivia about that issue. Every time I mention that to anybody, my wife chimes in and says, you know, it was actually my idea that you gave to Scott. And in my mind, I kind of remember that, but anyway, she's actually the one who came up with the concept. So credit goes to her.
And I actually do remember that. I really do. I remember that you guys wrote it together because I thought, right, that explains why it's so good.
And that's that's the Catwoman one that Darwin Cook did the cover for, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cover.
Yeah.
Well, I assume that you're. I know that we've talked about this issue before, Tim, where you know for our Batsuit Conundrum video that we did, that we got your excellent quote at the end to wrap everything up. Thank you again for that. We had talked about how that issue is a little bit out of the norm, where you know you can consider for the most part that Batman's costume is just Batman's costume no matter what. But that issue, you went back and showed, you know, a flashback to the animated series era to show, you know, passage of time kind of a thing. I don't know where I'm going with that, but I just thought I'd mention that we talked about that before.
Yeah, well, it's because people often, and I'm sure you guys, of course, have discussed this, but people often will, they'll try to find reasons why characters look different from one series to the next.
Mm-hmm.
Like story reasons, not, you know, design or animation or merchandising reasons that would be outside of the story. But I guess my theory is that whatever show you're watching, that's kind of the way the characters have always looked. Like,
right.
But yes, you're right. In that issue, I decided to go back to the old costumes just to sort of differentiate between past and present. And I just thought it was a storytelling device that worked.
So was that stuff like noted in the script, or was that just your choice on the day when you're drawing it?
I know that Scott keeps all of his scripts, but I don't remember.
I know that Scott scanned all of his scripts in the future and sent them to us, but maybe he can tell us right now in present.
We could.
Sound like a Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done. Gotham Adventures scripts.
Well, while Scott's looking out, just for time's sake, I'll bring up Tim, when you guys are drawing. Ted mentioned it up top. I don't remember if it was before we started recording or not, but each of your guys' Gotham Adventures issues started off with the splash page. Was that something of your intent, or was that also like a team decision to make that be like a whoa?
It was all Scott. Scott would. Well, I mean, maybe later in the series he might have, you know, checked with me first to see what I thought, but no, generally it was his idea to open that way. I feel like he just probably thought it was a very dramatic way of opening the issue.
Yeah,
he did think that. As a matter of fact, he did.
It does work. It always kind of reminded me of like the Watchmen covers, of how it's kind of the first panel of the page where you open it. In a way, I mean, it is the first page of the book still. But yeah.
Right.
One of the things that I liked, that I tried to do with all the Adventures books, starting from when first editing them, was to somehow try to capture something of the flavor and tone, as much of the flavor and tone of the animated series as possible, but comics aren't animation. I mean, I know that's a duh, but it needs to be restated, is that what some of the most effective animated episodes will open with like a moody establishing shot as the camera is panning in on Arkham or a rooftop or a crime going down, and you hear sound effects and maybe rain and cars or gunfire, and there's always music, and you don't have any of that in comics. All you have is a series of still images. So that's one reason why the Adventures books that I edited and wrote, with very few exceptions, always had a maximum of 4 panels per page, and preferably even fewer, and always opened on a splash, is because I wanted to give the impression of speed and motion. And having things just go by quicker with big panels was just one of the ways that I wanted to go for that. And by having just big open, having fewer big panels on a page, just felt to me more inviting to young readers, because these were designed to be accessible to the youngest of readers. But, you know, as I'm sure you guys have heard me say many times, but I also use Chuck Jones's Looney Tunes, well, anything Chuck Jones did, as a model. I mean, there are episodes of Looney Tunes or Ricky Tikki Tavi or the Dover Boys that I've seen a dozen times. And as a 50-year-old, I watch some of these that I've seen 20, 30 times, and they'll make me laugh. You know, we watch The Grinch every Christmas. And every Christmas, you know, when he gets the smile and his ears go out like that, you can't help but laugh. You know it's coming. You've seen it literally 40 times, but it's freaking magical. Chuck Jones was accessible to 3-year-olds, but he's also, you know, a middle-aged guy actually gets the intricacies of his storytelling. And I am no Chuck Jones, but that's what I was going for.
Well, I would agree that your guys' work on Gotham Adventures is probably the closest we got to like animation on the page, right? It's very frenetic, very animated. So
yeah, I will say we were actually recently talking with Dan Riba, and he was telling us that that, you know, him and the animation crew would read through, you know, the Adventures tie-in books, and he was just singing praise about how up till, you know, the Justice League Adventures, Justice League Unlimited books, that him and, you know, many other people on the animation crew really felt like you guys were, you know, living in the world that they had set up in the cartoon shows. You know, he was just going on about how well, you know, it was translated to the page throughout the Batman Adventures and Gotham Adventures and all of that.
Dan is one of the greats, so that is extremely high praise.
Yeah, that's great.
For sure. And Scott, I wanted to ask you, you got to work at DC at a certain era with a lot of the greats as well, working especially with the late great Denny O'Neil. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit to that experience and share any stories you might have about him and some of the other great creatives you got to interact with while you were there in the offices.
Well, it was a pretty insanely magical time in comics. I worked on staff at almost the best time in the history of comics to work on staff. It was after, you know, Watchmen and Dark Knight, not long after Watchmen and Dark Knight. I started 4 or 5 years, I guess, after Watchmen concluded, something like that. Just before I started, I don't know, a year or two before Image. So comics were selling well. They were respected. We had big budgets. Like, it was just everything. And most people.
Oh, no.
Enough experience and knowledge of history to know how lucky we were. It was crazy. So my first, when I interviewed with Denny, I was working in the production department, and I heard, why are you laughing? Did I cut out? Am I saying something?
Just for a second, you're back now.
It cut for a quick second.
Okay. I'd heard that Denny's assistant on the Batman books, Kelly Puckett, was leaving to go freelance. So I stopped Denny in the hall. I had never spoken to him. I'd spoken to I had never come close to speaking to him. Denny would sit in a darkened office all day. He liked natural light. He hated artificial light. So he would never have the overheads on, the fluorescents, because he didn't like the buzzing. So it would either be only the light from the window, or he'd have like a single regular incandescent bulb hanging over his desk. And so just deep shadows, and just his desk would be piled with comics and original art and stuff. Very mysterious. And so I stopped him after an interview, and he said, sure. And I, came back for the interview, and I sat down and he said, so why do you want to work in comics? And I just completely blanked. It's the most obvious question in the world. And I was like, wow, I was not prepared for this. It's such a basic question. I had prepared like more intricate. And so I sat back for a second and I said, well, I guess because on one level, comics are simply some of the most enjoyable entertainment that's currently available. But I think at its best, they're also an art form that's the equal to Shakespeare or Beethoven or Martin Scorsese? And he looked at me and he laughed. He said, that's what my kid says too. It was always just a gig to me, you know? And I thought at the time,
I want money.
at the time I thought, well, I really blew that, didn't I? And it was later that I was like, oh, the fact that I said the same thing as his beloved filmmaker's son, like, wow, I nailed this in my first answer. The rest of the interview was just gravy. So
definitely two ways to look at that.
So my literal first day of work, Denny pops his head in the office and says, hey, I'm going to lunch. Do you want to join me? I said, sure. He's like, okay, we're meeting Klaus Janson. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've been there for it was either my second day or it was my second week because Denny was actually out sick for most of my first week and most of my second week. So I don't remember if it was literally my second day or it was like the first day he was back. He was like, hey, you want to come to lunch? And already I was like, yes, I do. And he said, yeah, we're going to lunch with Dick Giordano and this new kid, Joe Quesada.
Wow.
Everyone was a new kid at some point. Yeah.
Go to lunch every day. You never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
Well, that really is basically it. It really is.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So what were some of the major, I know we talked to you about this in length kind of on our other conversation, but just to remind the people who are watching today, what were some of the significant story arcs that ran through the Batman titles that you were around to work on? I believe No Man's Land was a major one.
Yeah, so No Man's Land was the closing bookend. So when I got there, we were just working on a very small storyline that would have a big visual effect for the next decade, which was Destroyer. And that's when some mad bomber blew up all the modern buildings in Gotham so that all were left were like the 200-year-old ones, which had been designed by Anton Furst, the designer of the Tim Batman movies. So it was all these, crazy Gothic looking, there were no more, the buildings, the skyscrapers in Gotham no longer had right angles. They all were at, strange shapes and stuff like that. So that was the very first.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, Nightfall. We started working on Nightfall. I learned about it. It was still in the planning stages. I learned about that my first week.
That's why you tossed Bane into your first Gotham Adventures.
That is I was one of 4 people in the room when Bane was created. It was a hotel conference room in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It was just me, Denny O'Neil, Chuck Dixon, and Doug Mensch. And we spent 2 or 3 days figuring out who this brand new villain was going to be, this big bad that was going to take Batman down. And that was something that I thought the very first Bane episode of the animated series, I thought was I watched it again recently, and it's a great episode, but I felt like, they just went with he's a big dumb guy who uses drugs. He is a big guy who uses drugs, but I thought one of the things, and I feel like they actually did get to this later, is he's staggeringly intelligent. Bane is second to maybe only Ra's al Ghul in overall actual intellectual bandwidth. He's staggeringly intelligent. It's just easy to overlook because he's a big, huge guy who, uses steroids.
So it is just slightly different than the Batman and Robin movie interpretation.
Have you heard the story? Have you heard the story about why they did that?
Because they thought Bane was stupid. Why?
So I forget exactly who it was, but they were in an interview. They were saying that they were hanging out with Bruce Timm and they were trying to keep current on the new Batman comics and everything. And they got to the back breaking, and Bruce just goes, "This is stupid," and they wanted to bring Bane into the show. But they didn't want to do that, so they went ahead and went that other route with them.
Therefore, he almost breaks Batman, but not quite.
It was pretty clear when we got the script and storyboards, and it was literally the only time that we contacted them and said, "No, you can't do this," because the very final shot after they ripped the the tubes out of the back of Bane's head, and he goes, and Batman throws defeated Bane on Rupert Thorne's desk, I guess. Is that who it was?
Yeah, that's right.
And originally, he was going to be like this, like 95-pound weakling.
Yeah, crumpled.
He was just going to be this pathetic little, skin suit, basically. And I was looking at the storyboards, and we were like, they are so good at what they do. And there's absolutely no need for them to follow our continuity. And, Denny's attitude always was, there are a million different ways to play Hamlet, and none of them are necessarily right or wrong. They're just different levels of effective. Mm-hmm. And the same goes with Batman. So that's why, you had Joe Quesada would draw Batman with tiny little ears, and Kelly Jones with insanely long ears, and Jim Aparo somewhere in the middle, right? And that was all fine. Almost any way artists wanted to approach drawing these characters was fine. But the Bane thing, it was so transparently that they just didn't like the character and thought he was stupid. And we just thought, this is not effective. It doesn't make sense. A character is defined by their villains. So the better a villain is, when the character is triumphant, that's how much better the hero is. If you give him a really stupid villain, you're making your hero look stupid. So, not to mention, it was a major slap in the face to everyone who had worked on Bane.
Sure.
So
that's why I think when we talked a couple of years ago, you mentioned that that you guys on the Batman Adventures were often given the scripts and stuff for upcoming episodes just to kind of see what's going on. So yeah, I'm sure getting that would be like, you're doing what to my Bane, my baby.
Yeah, that is pretty much how it was. I was absolutely feeling a certain amount of ownership, not literally, obviously, unfortunately, in any way, but yeah.
Well, at least
I love his take on the new Harley Quinn show.
Oh yeah,
have you seen? It's really funny, but he's great. Bane's a standout character.
I thought you meant his take on it.
No, Bane he's hilarious in Harley Quinn.
Excellent.
Well, and of course they BDSM'd him up for the new Batman Adventures, so maybe that was an upgrade or a downgrade. It's hard to say.
But at this point, he's so well established.
Yeah.
After the Nolan movie.
Sure.
And there's now been an additional 20 years of comics. Mm-hmm. So now I guess it kind of doesn't matter what they do with him.
Well, Tom King brought him back to prominence recently in City of Bane and everything.
He's very intelligent in those issues.
Yeah, he was always like 10 issues ahead of Batman, like literally.
Well, we do need to bring this to a close pretty soon, so I wanted to ask both of you. We can start with Tim. Oh joy, Tim. I wanted to ask if there was any specific Easter eggs that you can remember off the top of your head that you had fun throwing into Gotham Adventures. For instance, in Matthew Manning's Batman Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures a couple years ago, he put him and his wife running away in a screaming crowd. Things like that are like, only Starros in the corner of this, random thing or something like that.
Well, actually, just before I answer that, I don't know if you guys saw that Scott sent the first page that he wrote of issue 50, because you were asking about the costumes.
Oh, it's here in the chat. There it is.
So it's all Scott. It was his idea. I see it right there. So I'm taking credit for a storytelling device and my clever storytelling, and yet it says right here. Scott's idea. So.
I think he just wrote that in before he pasted it so that it would look better.
Yeah. Retroactive continuity at its best, baby.
But just getting back to what you were saying, I put my wife in a lot of issues, although Scott was also responsible for that in a way, because my wife is a psychologist, and he created a character named Dr. McKee.
Right. Okay, I remember this.
Asylum, and she's based on my wife. I had previously drawn her. I think Batgirl was in disguise as a cop, and she had a blonde wig and glasses.
I remember that one.
Various family members' names. Like I think my brother-in-law's name is Maurizio, and there was a restaurant called Maurizio's.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there are little things like that. I mean, nothing that would be exciting to you guys, but they're very exciting.
It's all exciting to us.
It's exciting to know it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Off the top of my head, those are the ones that are coming to mind. But I'm sure there were other ones all through the series. And actually, that Dr. McKee thing, Scott. She also included her in a video game that he wrote.
Oh yeah,
Batman.
Was it Dark Tomorrow?
Dark Tomorrow.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
Notoriously the worst video game in history.
No,
We talked a lot about that with you in our first conversation, for sure.
it's no Superman 64 for sure.
At least.
There's also in the Ra's al Ghul issue, I think, issue 23, when Batman is undercover at Interpol.
Yes. Right.
Tim and I have our wanted posters on.
Oh yeah,
on his
That's true. Yeah.
the police station. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, all I have left is just to shamelessly get both of you to tell our current audience that is hopefully doing pretty well why they should subscribe to the Watchtower Database in your own.
Well, you guys clearly put a ton of effort into your videos. I mean, I'm amazed actually that like they're very. I admit I haven't seen all of them, but the ones that I have seen are very well researched, very well put together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tim is, as usual, lying. Every time one of your videos goes live, we have a Zoom chat for a couple hours just analyzing every frame of your latest video. They are towering works of art, no pun intended. They are watchtowering works of art and have advanced with Western civilization significantly.
Perfect. This is coming from Scott, who has maybe seen one or two.
This praise explains why we haven't gotten rejection letters from Scott yet.
That's right.
You know, what I want to see the art you sent me. I'm skeptical.
Well, maybe when Maddie grows up someday, we can get your official sign off, and we'll be all good to go.
Someday.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm sorry that this one. I'm sorry mostly to Scott that this one's a little bit shorter than the other ones. I'm just gonna keep picking on you, Tim. I'm so sorry. But yeah.
We have 15 more minutes. You want to go for an hour? Let's go for an hour.
I'm sure Scott could bring us to that hour.
Oh, I could. I can just listen. I can just start pontificating like nobody's business.
I think it'll be less stressful for future James, who's running this live, to cut it off now. But we really appreciate you guys being on here. Yeah, I hope we can do this again sometime. That's not, such a set specific time stream that I can edit down later. We talked to Dan Riba for like 2.5 hours, cut it down to 3 20-minute segments, and that was still so much removed from it. So I'm sure that we can do the same with it's all guys like you that we have endless questions for, and they'll range anywhere from how is your experience at DC to on page 16, panel 3 of episode. Yeah. So I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
And you've got like 50 issues of Gotham Adventures to talk about.
You're gonna edit this down to like 12 minutes, aren't you?
No, this is all going in. I'm glad he didn't say anything that you regret.
Interesting.
Well,
thanks again.
Yeah, and everyone watching, stay tuned for hours and hours more of this kind of stuff. Most of it live. This is panel 1 of 3 that are pre-recorded, but the rest is all taking place in real time. So thanks again to Tim and Scott for being on. We wish you the best in your future bat endeavors, and hopefully we'll have you on again at some point.
Go to Tim's Instagram and buy his stickers. Go buy Tim's
go buy Tim Levins merch. I think Scott's printing out entire Gotham Adventures scripts on t-shirts also, so hopefully.
They're going to be temporary tattoos. You can get my scripts as a tattoo.
Can I get permanent tattoos of these?
That you need to check with DC Legal, unless it's a tramp stamp, and then yes, it's public domain.
Okay.